Evening, John.
Good evening. Oh, sorry. Yeah, good evening. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I put in the wrong numbers. I didn't realise it had changed. Sorry.
Ready when you are, Chair. Can you move? You're already unmuted. Okay. Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the public. Welcome to the meeting, which is our last planning policy as KBC. It's a virtual meeting again, so please, viewers and all of those here on the committee, please be patient in terms of the proceedings. The speakers will be introduced by name, members, officers, public speakers prior to them speaking, the protocol for member and public participation, and the rules of debate. The chair's ruling during the debate will be final. So we'll go first to the officers' reports, then the speakers in order present on the speakers list. We have one speaker. Then there'll be the member debate. I will restate the recommendation to be voted on, seek seconder and proposer for the recommendation, and then vote. And Irison will undertake the vote, asking each member by name, and I will then state the decision reached from the vote. Do you want to take the register members here now, first of all,
Anne? Yes, Chair, I can do that. Just for any members of the public who may be listening without video, if you could just indicate present, that would be great. So Councillor Mike Tebbert.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Councillor Jan O'Hara.
Yes, here.
Councillor Segwin Brown.
Yes, here, but I have to give my apologies. I'm going to need to leave about 5 to 7 to go on to another meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Ruth Groom.
Yes, present.
Councillor Ian Jelly.
Present.
Councillor Linda Adams.
Present.
Councillor John Currall.
Present.
And we also have officers Julia Baish and Simon Richardson and Callum Galasso, who is acting as committee manager tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any apologies?
I've received no apologies, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed.
And Councillor Ash Davis has just joined the meeting.
Excellent.
Hello. Sorry, I had a few issues with the login details, but I'm here now.
Okay, you found the new email address, did you? Excellent. We'll move straight on then for declarations of interest. Does anyone have a declaration of interest? Yeah, we've got a few hands going up. Councillor Sedgwick Brown first, please.
Declare an interest as a member of Refo Town Council, Chair, please.
Thank you. Councillor Jelly.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Item 6 as a member of Refo Town Council, and item 7 as I'm the ward councillor for St Peter's Ward, which is where the hospital is based.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ruth Groom.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Member of Burton Latimer Town Council and also employee of Northamptonshire County Council Library Service. Thank you.
Councillor John Curran.
Yeah, the Mayor of Burton Latimer Town Council.
Thank you. Don't think I see any other hands. No, that's excellent. In which case we'll move straight on and just look at the minutes of the last meeting, which was held on the 27th of January. I'll just go through it for any corrections that may be needed, page by page. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. And page 5. Is it your wish that I sign these as a true record?
Mhm.
Can you just put your hand up and indicate, please? Thank you very much indeed. I've got no items of business that has been declared as urgent. We have one member of the public who's in the waiting room, and I think it's that lady will be invited in after we've had the presentation on item 6. So we'll move straight into item 6. And who's leading this? Is it Julia or Simon?
It's
Julia,
me,
Chair.
Julia, okay, thank you very much. All
Thank you.
yours, Julia.
Thank you. So the purpose of this report is to inform members of the proposed main modifications to the site-specific Part 2
Julia,
local.
could you move a bit closer to the microphone, please, so we can, it was not
Sorry,
coming through too clearly.
Is that clearer now, Chair?
That's a lot better, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. The purpose of this report is to inform members of the proposed modifications to the site-specific Part 2 local plan, and to ask members to agree a schedule of main modifications, which is attached to Appendix 1, and a schedule of proposed changes to the policies maps attached to Appendix 2 for public consultation. At the meeting of this committee held on the 27th of January, an update was provided on the examination of the site-specific Part 2 local plan. And members were advised that the council had provided some post-hearing work to the inspector, including a schedule of proposed main modifications to the plan. And at that time, the work was being reviewed by the inspector. The inspector's interim findings have now been received, and they've been published on the website. And the interim findings set out the inspector's main modifications to the plan, and they also amended or deleted some of the modifications proposed by the council. The report advises that the schedule of main modifications has been updated to reflect the inspector's interim findings, and that an update of the schedule had been provided to the inspector. Since the report was published, officers have continued to work with the inspector to update that schedule to take into account the inspector's comments. And as a result of that, there are 3 additional modifications now included within the schedule, which aren't in the version attached to Appendix 1. I'll just run through each of those. So the first one is main modification 2A, and this relates to paragraph 210 of the plan, and adds some additional wording in relation to the climate emergency, which was declared in the borough in 2019, and commits the council to reducing carbon emissions and improving its resilience to climate change. Main modification 4A relates to a reference in the plan which specified the 5-year housing land supply at a particular period in time. Because the 5-year land supply wasn't tested through the examination, the modification removes that wording and refers to the housing trajectory set out in Appendix 1 of the plan, to where people can find the 5-year land supply position. And then finally, main modification 9A is a minor change to employment policy EMP2, which refers to change of use to non-B class uses. And that needed to be changed to non-employment uses to reflect the changes to the use class order. And that's consistent with the changes that had already been proposed to the subsequent policy EMP3. So that one's really just to ensure consistency throughout the plan. Just taking you to paragraph 2.5 of the report, this draws members' attention to a number of the changes resulting from the inspector's interim findings. So you can see there that there are 3 policies which have been deleted from the plan, and that's policy HOU3, which supported proposals for retirement housing or care homes where developments had good access to public transport and local facilities. And the reason for that deletion was that the inspector considered that those requirements were already adequately addressed by joint core strategy policies. The second one was policy TCE1, which stated that the town centre boundaries are defined on the policies maps. Because those the policies BLA1, DES1 and ROT1 also refer to the town centre boundaries being on the proposals map. The inspector considered that policy was unnecessary. And then the final deletion relates to policy KET 10, which allocated McAlpine's yard at Pikeshey Lodge Road, Kettering, for housing, mixed housing and employment site. And that the reason for that deletion was due to unresolved issues relating to flood risk for the site. So then moving on, amendments proposed by the council that were included in previous versions of the schedule to policy KET 10 and supporting text, which referred to aspirations of Wicksteed Park Charitable Trust to bring forward a larger area of development land have been removed, as the inspector didn't consider that the modification was justified in the interest of soundness. A large number of the historically and visually important local green space designations, which relate to policy NEH3, have been removed. Where the local green spaces have been removed, it was because the inspector didn't consider that the requirements of the MPPF had been met, particularly in relation to demonstrating that the sites have been identified and put forward by the community, and the reasons why the local community considered them to be demonstrably special. And then there's an area of allotment land at Thorpe Mouser, which relates to policy NEH4, which has been removed from the policies map. And that again was because the inspector didn't consider the designation to be justified, and that while the allotment is publicly available, the inspector didn't consider it to be publicly accessible. And then the final bullet point there highlights a number of other modifications to policies which resulted in more significant changes. So I won't go through each of those in detail. Just to summarise the implications of those changes, the deletion of policy KET 9 results in an overall reduction in the amount of employment land allocated in the Part 2 plan. However, officers have provided information to demonstrate that the plan allocates sufficient housing and employment land to meet strategic requirements, and therefore it's not necessary for any alternative site or sites to be identified to achieve strategic requirements. And then in relation to the deletion of a large number of the green spaces, which is obviously disappointing, particularly given the amount of information that was supplied to try and address the concerns raised. However, in considering the implications of removing the local green space, the inspector's findings letter did highlight that the inspector was content that the spaces would be protected by other policies in the plan and the joint core strategy, including those relating to open countryside, heritage assets, green infrastructure, and the development principles for the rural area and individual settlements. And officers did a piece of work looking at each of the historically and visually important open spaces which have been recommended for deletion. And you can see under paragraph 2.8 there, we've set out a table which identifies any specific designations which protect those sites, and also general policies which again adds some additional protection. So if you look in the table there, you can see that a number of the spaces are outside of the settlement boundaries, so would be protected by open countryside policies, while others are in conservation areas. So there's a level of protection there for those. And again, there's a couple of the sites where there are specific reference to those green spaces in the village development criteria as well. So there's also a level of protection there. Then moving on, paragraph 2.9 highlights other proposed modifications included in the schedule. I won't go through all of those in detail. I'll just pick out a couple. So there are amendments that address the changes to the use class order, which changed in September 2020. There are a number of incidental amendments resulting from the deletion of policies in the plan. There's a number of amendments that seek to provide clarity to the application of policies, and also to remove repetition with the joint core strategy. In policy EMP1, there's some additional clarification provided on the approach to expansion or modernisation of existing buildings within safeguarded areas. There's some additional text to clarify the role of district and local centres at the sustainable urban extensions in the retail hierarchy. Within the chapter on the natural environment and heritage, there are changes which seek to clarify the requirements. Some of those policies have been reordered to ensure that it's easier to apply them to applications for development proposals, and also to clarify the approach to off-site, on-site contributions and mechanisms for determining contributions. And then all site allocation policies, opportunity for redevelopment policies and environmental improvement policies have been reviewed to remove repetition with the joint core strategy and national policy, and also between tiers of policy within the Part 2 plan. There's an amendment to highlight the policy STA2, which is housing allocation for land to the south of Harbour Road, Stoke Albany. And there's an increase in the yield of this site, which followed on from detailed discussions following the submission of an application on the site. Previously, the council had proposed an amendment to the boundary of that site to reduce the site area. However, the increase in yield has meant that proposed amendment's been removed from the schedule, and it's proposed to revert back to the boundary that was included within the publication plan. And then finally, there's some amendments in the rural chapter which seek to provide a more consistent approach to set out how development within each of the tiers of the village categories needs to be considered. And then an update to the housing trajectory to update it to the most recent monitoring period, and to reflect the deletion of the McAlpines yard sites, and also the proposed increase in yield for policy STA2. So in addition to the schedule of proposed modifications, a schedule of additional modifications has also been prepared. And these are minor changes which, for example, provide clearer wording, punctuation and factual updates, but they don't affect the policy in the plan, policies in the plan, and the inspector doesn't consider additional modifications. They're a matter just for the council, and they won't form part of the consultation. They're provided just for clarity purposes. So members are asked to endorse the schedule of main modifications and the schedule of proposed changes to the policies map for public consultation, and to note the schedule of additional modifications, which is attached to Appendix 3. And due to the need for the inspector to be satisfied that the schedule of main modifications and due to the need for the inspector to be satisfied with the schedule, and also for the updates to take into account the sustainability appraisal and habitat regulations assessment, members are asked to agree that final editing is delegated to the interim head of development services in consultation with the chair of Planning Policy Committee. I should have mentioned earlier actually that the sustainability appraisal and the HRA update are currently being prepared, and we're expecting to receive the draft of those documents tomorrow. So at that point, we'll know if there are any sort of implications of the findings of those documents. The modifications will be subject to 6 weeks public consultation, which will be undertaken in accordance with the local plan regulations and also our statement of community involvement. And the consultation is only about the main modifications and the changes to the policies map. So it doesn't relate to other aspects of the plan. So it's not an opportunity for people to comment on parts of the document that have previously been subject to consultation. It's just focused on the modifications. And once the consultation's finished, the inspector will consider all representations made before finalising the examination report and the schedule of main modifications. And then the additional modifications will be published alongside, but they're just for clarity purposes. Paragraph 3.4 of the report advises that the consultation is scheduled to begin in the week commencing the 15th of March. We're aiming to commence the consultation on the 19th of March, and that would run until the 30th of April. The consultation will run beyond vesting day for the new Northamptonshire Unitary Authority. So within all of the consultation material, we'll ensure that it's clear that change is taking place to make sure that doesn't have any implications on the consultation. And you can see under paragraph 3.4 there that the proposed approach to consultations. So a letter, email to consultees, notice in the press, information on the website, and also on the council's consultation portal. From the 1st of April, we'll also ensure there's a link to the consultation from the new Northamptonshire Unitary Authority site, and we'll also seek to advertise the consultation on the social media. Due to the current restrictions, we're not able to make hard copies of the documents available in the council offices or the libraries, but we'll ensure that if people aren't able to access the documents electronically, that we seek to provide copies to ensure everyone can be engaged in the consultation. So moving to the recommendation, it's recommended members agree the schedule of proposed main modifications and the schedule of proposed changes to the policies map attached to Appendix 1 and 2 for public consultation, and note the schedule of additional modifications, and that members delegate final editing of these schedules to the interim head of development services in consultation with the chair of Planning Policy Committee.
Thank you very much, Julia. We do have one speaker, which is Councillor Scouse from Broughton Parish Council. So if we can bring Councillor in from the waiting room, that would be great. Good evening, Councillor Scouse.
Good evening.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes, fine. Yes, fine. Thank you very much.
Good evening and welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the committee, please.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to speak this evening on the item 6, the local plan. The Parish Council will follow the progress of the local plan examination with some interest. During the hearing concerned with the gypsies and travellers, we noted that the inspector expressed considerable concern that there was to be no gypsy and traveller policy within the local plan, but rather it would be added at a later date as a development plan document, or DPD. In the inspector's letter to KBC dated 21st of January, where the table of main modifications is set out, Appendix 2 requires the council to amend the text on page 4, paragraph 1.4, to provide greater certainty that the DPD will be completed in accordance with the local development scheme timetable. The council's proposed response is to confirm that the DPD is on track but the local development scheme states that the first stage of stakeholder and community engagement should have already taken place during January to March. Parish councils with existing traveller sites have been repeatedly assured that they will be consulted as part of this initial engagement process, but this has not happened as yet. Can officers confirm that there has been stakeholder and community engagement and that they do intend to consult with the parish councils? The local development scheme also states that the draft development plan document for gypsies and travellers will be published for public consultation in April. Can officers comment on the likelihood that the draft gypsy and traveller DPD will be available for consultation next month, as stated? And if not, should the proposed modification wording be amended to reflect the realistic position? Local plans must address the needs of the whole community, including gypsies and travellers. If the inspector is unconvinced that the DPD is progressing in a meaningful way, the examination process could be delayed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Scouse. Simon, I think that is down to you to respond.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, first of all. Hello, Councillor Scouse. So, yes, in terms of your points, and I'll answer the specific questions you asked. So, in terms of has the consultation taken place yet? No, I'm afraid it hasn't taken place as yet. In terms of the likelihood of consultation next month, again, no, I'm afraid not. It's easy to turn back as to the fundamental constraints that are holding those elements back, and I'll draw on that in a moment. I will update you though, because I think it's worthwhile doing so on the programme of works that we anticipated we'd have made progress on. So that was with reappointing opinion research, ORS anyway it is, I know that, so they're the consultants that undertook the GTAA, reappointing them to undertake a pitch delivery assessment for the area. So that's the document members may recall, and you may do yourself, Pat, where we're looking to explore various elements on the delivery and identification of suitable sites to meet gypsy and traveller need as opposed to the settled communities need. Some of that work has been ongoing. That in particular relates to the progress with the need for a compulsory purchase order to be raised on a 10-pitch site. We've been talking to Steve Jarman, who represents ORS. It's been challenging, particularly for him. He's been feeding back to us the challenges he's finding with the lockdown situation. He lives in Wales, so automatically there's a distance setup arrangement for him. He did inform us in the first instance that he got the contact details, telephone numbers for the gypsies, but it appears that that's not necessarily the case for all the families that we're seeking to engage with and identify how their needs can best be met. So then, of course, we've hopped in and out of lockdown on a number of occasions. So it just hasn't got off the ground to the extent that we want it to. And the information we're collecting from that piece of work will be critical for identifying how we can best go about meeting the need. We have been holding conversations with our partner authorities in Northamptonshire, so that remains a positive avenue to explore, but it is very much about understanding the needs, the more detailed needs of the families involved, and how we can go about satisfying those needs through the various mechanisms. And so they can also include rationalising of existing sites, so increasing the numbers of pitches on specific sites. It can be small extensions. It can be identifying new areas if necessary. But that piece of work will be the first consultation that we'll want to undertake. So we're engaging with the settled and the Gypsy and Traveller community in that process. Now, I know another element that we've committed to is for ORS to speak to the parish councils, specifically those parish councils that are directly involved or have members of the Gypsy and Traveller community within their parishes, so that we can gather the settled community's views at an early stage and understand more about the prospects and the opportunities available to us. So we're hopeful with the news that we're hearing over all the COVID solutions that are being brought forward, that we can kick it off in earnest within the next few months, but it looks like it's going to take that period. The other point that I know that ORS have raised with us is that because of the uncertainty, a large number of their staff are furloughed. So of course that's restricting them from picking up isolated or individual projects for the period. So that is an additional constraint on them. So the commitment is very much there. The wording within the modifications, we feel, has been strengthened upon the inspector's request, so that it's clear and transparent that there is the commitment. And we really hope and expect that within the next few months we can get that piece of work undertaken, and then we can motor on with the consultation that is necessary. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that update, Simon. Could I ask that you agree that you will keep all of the parish councils advised as to progress as things develop?
Certainly, Chair.
We won't come back to this meeting specifically, but we would feel rather more secure if you can give that undertaking.
Yes, Chair, we will do that.
Okay, thank you. I hope that reassures you, Councillor Scouse, and thank you for drawing it to our attention. Bye-bye now.
We're going to put you back into the waiting room, Councillor Scouse.
We can now move on to the main members' debate. Those wishing to speak, please indicate by either the hand or putting your hand up so that we can see you. I see no hands coming up.
Councillor O'Hara, Chair.
Sorry?
O'Hara, Chair.
Councillor O'Hara, you're first. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I have. Can you hear me okay? Because I know you have problems. I've got a number of questions, Chair. Should I start with the questions? It's just a few of them really, on the fact that, you know, we've lost all these open spaces, and I appreciate that we can probably take that forward once we've done this 6-week consultation. But I am concerned with a couple of things. If we look at page 48 and 49, you're talking about the critical drainage, and I mean the large page 48 and 49, not the small ones. And you're talking about critical drainage there. I'm just a bit concerned about how that's addressed, because as we know, the water table's rising all over the place because of the amount of building that we've got, and we've had concerns with some of the applications that are coming forward now, because a lot are being built on floodplains, and it doesn't matter if you're going to plant a lot of trees, they're not mature trees, so they're not going to soak up that water. So I know that we've got plenty of, you know, we have a strategic flood risk assessment, and for every site we have that, but it does concern me that a lot of it has been struck out. And and then moving on to page 51, you're looking at open spaces and the green infrastructure. And all of this seems to not, well, it's been removed basically. And I can't see how that can be included now. Again, I suppose it's going to be included in this 6-week assessment, consultation. But, you know, how can we protect that? Because we wanted it in now. If it doesn't come in during the consultation, how are we going to protect all those spaces? And then just moving on to page, like in Burton and a lot of the villages, we found we've got archaeological sites where we found items of interest. And that is still the case now. If somebody wants to build on some lands, their archaeologists can go on there and they have time to do that. But I don't understand why the inspector's taking it out. And then page 60 and 62. What have I highlighted there? Can you tell me what it means? On page 62, it says, at MM28, it says at local level, the councils commission the development, and then it says the open space standards paper. What does that actually mean? It says enables the council to make informed decisions on how best to maintain a stable open space network and how to plan for the right spaces in the right places. What does that actually mean? Because that's very, very open-ended and could be down to interpretation, and then it's going to be down to personal interpretation. So whereas if it's in the SSP or something, then it's more specific. And again, on page 60, it's talking about that many of the borough's green and open spaces already afforded policy protection through the MPPF, which is what I was talking about. I appreciate a lot of them are protected, but it's far better if they're of historical interest or the sites of specific interest that we've protected them, the same as we do with conservation areas within villages. So I just would like to have some comfort in knowing that they will be taken forward and protected. And then finally, it's just a little bit on Burton and Latimer, but on page 160, there's a little bit about brownfield and infill lands and how that's going to be done. And it feels like we're taking away some of the protection that we've got. I know if we've got scattered villages, those villages are protected and we won't let them build outside those. But I wanted to know that within a village, you're not going to have an overdevelopment with it because there's an infill land there. And my final question, before we get to Burton, is page 121 about the floodplains. They concern me greatly because we've had floods. We had floods back in December, and that's before any building took place. And we're still getting building on floodplains. And I think that's one thing that we really need to tighten up. I don't know whether we can do that within this, but it'd be nice to know that we can. And then before I hog it all, can I just go through a few things for Burton Latimer? Is that okay, Chair, or do you want me to let other people speak?
Probably we'll come back to that one. Okay. If we can address these ones that you've raised for a start.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Who's going to handle these, Julia?
Shall I kick off, Chair, and sure. Julia can chip in? So, so firstly, in terms of the concern over the loss of open space, and I think that links into the open space standards paper. This all comes out of the in-depth studies that have been undertaken by KKP consultants. They were one of the issues that we were progressing just as we were moving towards the pre-submission consultation. I think it was at the time. So that study work included an audit and then a strategy on open space, playing pitches, and sports facilities. So it's undertaken that detailed audit to identify where we are, where there may be shortcomings, and we can focus on improving and strengthening in those areas, and also where there are sufficient facilities to meet the need and the growing need at that as well, so that we can perhaps are able to direct through the strategy document our focus and our emphasis in investing in those areas that there's a shortfall in those requirements. So it's not looking to restrict open space or any of those other facilities in any way. In fact, the opposite. It's looking to strengthen those areas that need it and give that specific focus. So that's ongoing, and the result of that will lead to a supplementary planning document. And the benefit of that supplementary planning document is that when it comes to guiding on applications and proposals in the first instance, but then also decision making, it'll provide the detail necessary to give you the confidence that the development is helping to support and invest in the right areas for open space, playing pitches and sports facilities. And it's already coming about in various proposals. And the fact that it's evidenced information, it gives us a stronger grounding to demonstrate to the developers that it requires their commitment to invest in those aspects of the need. So that hopefully is the first point. If I then try and pick up on the critical drainage, I think it was page 48. I think that one may have been relating to the McAlpine site, which was one of the sites that we hoped to be able to allocate through that plan, through this plan rather, and for that to be for a mix of residential and employment. And the way that we'd been able to design or separate it off, that was that the area of greater risk would not contain the residential properties, because within the hierarchy they require that specific added protection. However, the area that may be given over or in fact left to employment was more appropriate for that use, but the measures would be incorporated to ensure that those aspects were protected. As it turned out, at examination, the Environment Agency were satisfied with the information that had been provided to them, apart from in one area, and that was the dam breach risk associated with the Lake Avenue reservoir, and then Thorpe Malser and Cransley reservoirs. So it appeared a specific piece of work that was required. We sought for the developers to undertake that piece of work, but they resisted it. So we took it to examination to seek to ensure or convince the inspector to see if she was prepared to allow for a criteria within the policy to deal with that issue, and she wasn't comfortable with it, which is fair enough. So she pulled that one from us. It's still there and it's still available, and it could come through the planning process. It's just that the information wasn't there for us to be able to allocate it within the plan. And we, as Julia has already mentioned, the loss of those housing numbers doesn't impact on our need, on a housing need figure. We don't need to go back out and identify further allocations to meet the housing need. In terms of, just trying to think which bit to pick up for you next. Perhaps I will turn to Julia. Is there any aspect that you're able to tackle at this time?
Yeah, I think the other aspect was related to the heritage policy and why there was sort of text crossed out within that section of the plan. I say heritage policy, actually there isn't a policy, it all text in this chapter. And the reason that there are sort of alterations to that chapter to remove some of that text is because some of it repeated what's already in the joint core strategy and national policy. So it was really to sort of trim it down to remove unnecessary wording and focus on the sort of local side of things. So the sort of particular characteristics of Kettering Borough, and also focusing in on the preparation of a local list to identify locally important buildings, because the rest of heritage asset protection is already dealt with through both national policy and the joint core strategy. So yeah, it was more about sort of focusing on what the plan is trying to achieve in relation to that aspect. Were there any other points that we've missed there?
Sorry, Julie. No, Julie, Simon. No, that's brilliant. I was just, it was just that you did so much work on this paper, and for the inspector to come back and cross so much out, I feel like the inspector's taken the localism out of it and is relying on the joint core strategy to cover us for it, whereas we'd personalised it almost, because we'd been specific in saying this is what we want to protect, this is how we want our spaces developed, and this is how we want to evolve, because we have a mandate to protect this planet, and we have a mandate to make sure we build homes that are fit for purpose. And it felt like taking it away. So the only other thing I wanted to ask was that where it says that, like Simon just said about the water going into the reservoirs. So does that mean that if they were looking at developing that site, then they were thinking of diverting the water so they can go to those reservoirs? Is that what you mean? So you're thinking of Thorpe Malser and Cransley and that, because that's a heck of a trek to get the water over.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. That the point that we were asked to look into was that if the reservoirs failed, there would then be a sudden rush of water downstream towards those properties. So there's a requirement that each of those reservoirs provide a safety report. I'm not sure how regularly those are carried out, but one aspect of it is that there are measures in place to ensure that there's a mechanism to protect any properties further downstream. So it was an information gathering exercise and then report by specialist consultants, and that was all that was missing. Obviously, we don't know the real outcomes of that because that piece of work wasn't undertaken. So it was just around the breach. If they failed, what measures were in place to help to protect properties and life further downstream?
Simon, sorry, following on from that then, if say like they want to build somewhere and there's a couple of places, there's places in Rothwell, there's places in Desborough, there's certainly two places I know of in Burton Latimer, and I think, is there one in Brown? Can't think. Anyway, there's areas where we've got Anglian Water have got pipes where they want to build. So you could not build on those. There's certainly a site in Burton you definitely couldn't build on because the old water pipes are still there. The old waterworks are still there. So those pipes would have to be, before they got planning permission, would it be that those pipes must be moved by Anglian Water? And if so, that would be a cost for the contractor, not Anglian Water. But my concern is that it causes so much disruption, and the on cost of that ecologically is just crazy. But it's been taken, it's been included on page 100, and within the Burton Latimer plan it's mentioned, within the Rothwell plan it's mentioned, and it's in bold, and you put it in bold. So obviously you have concerns about that, and we have concerns about floodplain. Is that something that the inspector is conscious of, and that's why she's kind of picked out certain sites because of that?
Julia,
Yeah, I'll
look on the
respond to that one. That the wording that's in relation to the foul sewer and water mains in Anglian Water ownership was actually put forward by Anglian Water. So that was included within the schedule of modifications that we put forward when we submitted the plan. So yeah, it came from Anglian Water initially.
and from the practical sense, yes, there would be the requirement that either they are redirected and re-provided on in a different location, or if they are infrastructure, that the development designs around them so that they follow the route of, they don't go within a distance of properties. So they'll often follow more strategic access roads, so that if they need to get to them, they can dig them up without affecting specific properties.
Yeah, well, that's what I was getting at, because that's what they've done to build the 5,000 houses on the East of Kettering. They've run it down the A6, and it cuts across Burton, and then it joins, so it go out to the sewage farm at Wellingborough. So that's what I was getting at, really, to see that.
We'll come back to your specific Burton Latimer questions in a moment. Let's see if there's anyone else that wants to speak, particularly just Councillor Sedgman Brown has got to go. Have you got anything particular that you wish to raise?
Yes, please, Chair, if I may. I've got a couple of concerns on page 152, actually. One of them, under the removal of the policy ROT number 1, the first item, to maintain the use of Market Hill car park for the Roll Fair. I ought to probably declare an interest at this point. I'm actually a member of the Roll Fair Society. And I just wondered, because obviously that's a charter fair, royal charter fairs granted by King John way back in 1204. And it's always been in the market square. And I just wondered, is this going to be a problem for the fair for the future? And secondly, and I'm probably going to answer my own question here, under the things that have been removed under policy ROT2, such as the narrowing of the road, provision of on-street parking, etc., etc. Have those items been removed because they're actually part of a Section 106 agreement for the new Rothwell North development that's coming along? Just really want to just check my understanding there, because these are all 4 items under R that have been struck out are actually part of a Section 106 agreement that I understand, sort of in place. So thank you, Chair. Just sort of reassure me on the fair and that other bit, please. Would be great.
Yeah, those deletions relate to the targets included in the monitoring chapter of the plan. So what the inspector wanted us to do was simplify the targets included in that section. If you go to page 98 and 99, that shows you the wording changes to that policy, to policy ROT1 and ROT2. So on page 98, you can see the continued use of the market squares still in the policy itself. Yeah, it's only in relation to the monitoring that it's been removed.
Oh yeah, thank you for that, Julia. I think panic overtook me at the thought of an urban revolt in Rothwell if we couldn't have the fair annually on the market square, and I must have missed that reading that part.
Thank you. Are you content? Your questions have been answered then?
Yes. And the Section 106, obviously, yeah, that's all in the 106, isn't it? So yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to, at this point, while I've got the microphone open, I'm going to take my leave for this evening. Thank you all very much. Hope to see you again soon. I'm going to duck over to Northamptonshire now, as if by magic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt there. I'm at the same meeting, so I will depart as well at that point.
Okay. Are there any issues you wish to raise at this point?
I think colleagues have really summed up my concerns. I just hope that all of the good work we've put in, particularly Julia and Simon with the green spaces, isn't lost, and we can make sure that's still embedded and protected as we move to unitary.
Okay, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Anyone else put their hand up?
Councillor Jelly, Chair.
Councillor Jelly next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think Councillor Brown's stolen some of my thunder, actually talking about the Section 106 in Rothwell. The other thing, just going about the flood mitigation and that in Rothwell, I think long term, and I'm not quite sure, I've been trying to find it within the report, there is a plan for potentially an additional reservoir in the area of the valley that runs through Rothwell. And I'm not sure when that is likely to come in, but I think it's something that we need to be aware of for the future. And obviously the mitigation of floods down through the Ice Brook, which runs just down by the bottom of my house. So from that point of view, but the other thing I want to ask a question about the consultation that we're doing. Obviously it starts Monday, it's 6 weeks. So this will be reported back, obviously, I guess, to the new unitary council. I'm not sure about the planning policy committee extending. I think there's some changes to what will happen in the future, but I assume that this will be reported back in the normal way so that we have a full update on the outcome of the consultation for this part.
Yes, Councillor. In fact, so the consultation we're planning will launch on a week on Friday. Is that right, Julia? It is, isn't it? 19th.
19th, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So, the nature of the consultation, as Julia indicates, will be specifically towards the main modifications alone. So, in effect, the inspector has we've agreed the principles around these main modifications, and the fact that she's comfortable with them. She wants to know what third parties feel about it. We'll gather together and report the results of the consultation back to her, and she'll come back to us with a final report. So it'll be the inspector's final report that we'll be reporting to the council, and obviously it will be Northamptonshire Council. We're still to see with clarity the nature of the committee structure, but my understanding is that there will be a policy element to that committee. So that there will be a group that will be will be tasked with considering the inspector's report.
Yeah, I think they were going to call it something like an executive policy committee, something like that.
Yeah, I didn't know how much I could say of what I thought was going on, to be honest, but you said it, yeah. So yeah, I'm safe. But yes, I think you're right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Was there anyone else?
Councillor Groom, Chair.
Councillor Groom, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Councillor O'Hara has covered some of the things I was going to mention, so I won't ask them again, but I was going to ask about the heritage. Now I'm just looking, I think that was page...
Sorry, about the what?
Heritage, page 54, 55, protection of heritage sites. Page 54, 55.
Okay.
Thank you.
What's your question?
Well, quite a lot of the heritage has been protecting heritage sites has been crossed out, and I just wondered how the heritage sites were going to be protected.
Take that one, Councillor. So the inspector was wanting us to align the wording that we chose within our local policy closer to that contained within the National Planning Policy Framework. And so she pulled us back to ensure that we were properly reflecting national policy in that regard. I can't remember the exact terminology we used, but it related the same, but it wasn't the same. And so when we fall under a challenge over the wording of some of our policies. She wanted to ensure that we were strong and robust. So we've adjusted it to refer to, it's the point about preservation and protecting and enhancing, I think is the terminology that's in there. So it's a tweak around the specific wording. The emphasis that we wished for in policy remains in terms of protecting heritage.
Okay, thank you, Simon, and thank you, Julia. And I would like to say thank you for all the hard work you've done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Was there anyone else, or can I go back to Councillor O'Hara? Linda, did you have any questions? No, not at this stage. Councillor O'Hara, you had some specifics on Burton Latimer, I think you wanted to raise.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just a few things. I don't know who I need to ask, Julia or Simon. If you turn to page 86, well, 87 actually, but it starts on page 86. When you're looking at the environmental improvements that should be included for Burton, the inspectors kind of crossed a few things out. But we had put in there that we want to make improvements to make the street more pedestrian friendly and to reduce the speed of traffic. I don't particularly know how you can make it more pedestrian friendly, but it's something that we wanted to do. What does it mean by what kind of environmental improvements will there be? It says creation of a higher quality open space which may also be used to strengthen the existing market offer at this site, which is the town square. I don't quite know what else you could do with that, because it's just an open space and we have the market on there once per Saturday of the month. And then my second question is, glad to hear I've only got 3. It says to demonstrate a high quality design which reflects the historic nature of the site and responds to local character. This is land to the west of Kettering Road. So would that, and can that include, because we want to keep with the character, would we include the document Building for a Healthy Life? And then I've already asked you about the flooding, so that one's covered. And then on page 88, does it mean that we would have, it says demonstrate a high quality design which reflects the historic setting of the site and adjacent land, and that's all being crossed out. So does it mean that we would adopt, because to me that read that we should use the natural stone of the area to keep within the housing that's been built there already. So does that mean that any application to build there would have to use the natural stone of the area that's already on that frontage? And then the question was about angling water, which you've already answered anyway, which is the MM43, which is the policy BLA 5. So that one's okay. So that really was the burning questions, was the fact that, you know, we have got a lot of we've got an old waterworks at the top end of Burton, so that land can't really be built on anyway without taking it all out. And then my only other question is further down on page, it's page 149. There's a bit crossed out there, and it's not actually called Jocks anyway, but what was Jocks Autos, which is the car repair place right next to Sainsbury's on the High Street. It's talking about that by 2031 redevelopment sites BL1 to BL4 as set out in policy BLA2 will be dealt with, but these have all been crossed out. Is that because she doesn't like having specifics, because people, you know, developers can change their mind, or the site owners can change their minds? And in which case there's also a mention about Bosworth, and they've changed the date to 2024. What happens if Bosworths don't relocate because they can't find anywhere? I know they haven't got the owners to move, but I wasn't sure why on page 151 that's all been crossed out. Is it page 151? Anyway, they've changed the date to 2024, and I think it was 2031, which probably aligned with the JCS and the plans that we did for that. So it's just a few queries really as to you know, some of the things that have been mentioned and some of the things she's crossed out, again, it's down to us protecting them, which we can do through other means. But it almost like depersonalized it, because on page 85 there's a bit on there about protecting the grade 2 or the grade 2 war memorial, which would that be covered because it's in the conservation area, or is it not, has it no longer got that protection? Because I didn't understand on page 84 about the historical buildings. It says provide where appropriate. Where is it? Hang on a minute, let me find it. I can't find the wording now. I know what that was about. The page 84 was, I'm sorry, I got myself muddled up there. Page 84, it says where appropriate, 30% of dwellings as affordable housing in accordance with policy 30 of the JCS. I don't understand why that's been taken out, because I thought that was imperative on most building sites now. Is that because it's in the JCS?
Yeah.
And it didn't need repeating?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank
should
you.
I make a start on answering those ones? That's correct in terms of the 30%. That's been removed because it's already set out in Joint Core Strategy Policy 30, so it was duplicated there. In terms of the queries on the crossing outs, on I think it was 149 and 150, those again are the monitoring targets and indicators, so they're not the policies themselves. It was just to simplify the annual monitoring that's required as part of the plan, because with all of those in there, it would have been quite onerous actually for us to do that on an annual basis. So that's the reason for that. And in the same with the timescale for Bosworths, that reflects the timescale that we've got in the housing trajectory for the site. So that's the most up-to-date position we have in terms of when that would come forward by. And with the environmental improvements, they've been given the date of 2031 to reflect the plan period, because it's likely that they'll come forward throughout that plan, throughout the time of the plan. So that's the reason for that. In terms of the query on the criteria for the high quality design for land west of Kettering, we had in the original plan, we had two separate criteria, one requiring a heritage impact assessment and another requiring a high quality design. So the inspector asked us to consolidate that into one criteria because they're sort of interlinked really. So the start of criteria A seeks to address the high quality design, and then goes on to require the heritage impact assessment. So it was more about consolidating the two criteria into one rather than deleting them. Then in relation to the environmental improvements, I mean, we haven't got any specific detailed designs for these sites. They're identified as sort of areas for opportunity, and the environmental improvements could include, for example, improvements to street furniture and that kind of thing, or could involve reconfiguration of areas to improve the sort of space. At this stage, we've sort of highlighted them at a high level, which means sort of in the future more detailed proposals could be worked up, looking at how, in detail, how those areas could be improved.
All right, thank you for that. Thank you both. Thank you for everything you've done on this report and the previous one. Thank you for all the work you did. I mean, it's so in depth, it's amazing. So thank you. Thank you for your attention to detail with the inspector. I think it was quite arduous and you've done a fab job. So thank you to you guys and all the rest of the team that have been involved.
Thank you for that comment. You did mention building for a healthy life. The core spatial strategy has already got building for life in there, and that, if you like, has been superseded by building for a healthy life. I think the change is going to be, and you're fully aware that it was agreed at the Joint Planning Committee that with immediate effect, new developments that are to come to anywhere in North Northants need to follow the Building for a Healthy Life criteria, which is absolutely critical to delivering the quality of properties that we're looking for. Does anyone else wish to make any comments at this stage? No, in which case I'm going to ask for a proposer and seconder. I'll just go to the recommendations again. The first one is, this is on page 16, that we agree the schedule of proposed main modifications and the schedule of proposed changes to the policies map attached to appendices 1 and 2 for public consultation, and note the schedule of additional modifications. And 2, delegate final editing of these schedules to the interim head of development services in consultation with the chair of the Planning Policy Committee. Could I have a proposer and a seconder? Jan's proposed, and 2 lots of hands have gone up for seconding. I think Ruth got it by a short head. In which case we will now go, please, and for the vote on the recommendation.
Yes, if you could indicate for, against or not voting. Councillor Jan O'Hara.
For, please, Anne.
Councillor Ruth Groom.
For, please, Anne.
Councillor Linda Adams. For. Councillor John Currell.
For, please, Anne.
Councillor Ian Jelly.
For.
Thank you, Chair. That is
and Councillor Tabbert as well.
Yeah, that's unanimous.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. We will move on to the next item on our list, the last item on the agenda, which is in relationship item 7, Kettering General Hospital proposed local development order. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report, Chair, is to gain members' support for continued discussions to agree a local development order for the site of Kettering General Hospital. So kicking off a bit of background first, the General Hospital is one of the hospitals announced by the government for significant investment. A strategic outline case is to be submitted to the government this spring. I think it may be by the end of this month, actually, and a master plan for how and where investment will be made for the rebuild and expansion is being worked upon. Phase 1, 2 and phase 3 will cost a total of £765 million. So really a significant rebuild, and that will take in the region of 8 to 10 years for construction. Officers of the council have been drafted in to help where they can support the work being undertaken. One such area of discussion regards the preparation of a local development order for the site. So local development orders provide permitted development rights for specified types of development in specified locations that can be used to help accelerate development and simplify the planning process. Members will recall that the Seats on Streets local development order has been adopted for Kettering Town Centre, and that's been helping to provide growth to the outdoor cafe culture. Turning now to paragraph 2.6, officers are seeking members' agreement for continued discussions on the preparation of a local development order with the General Hospital to explore what types of development may be appropriate to include in the local development order, to reduce the need for minor planning applications and reduce delays. Now, clearly, with 8 to 10 years worth of development likely to go ahead, it's going to be very, very complex, and delays will add complications around spend, around costs, etc. So we're exploring the opportunity that a local development order may bring to help to overcome some of those concerns. It's anticipated that there would need to be a buffer with the surrounding residential development. So that's one element that we're starting to discuss. How far to the outskirts of the existing site should we go? Or do we draw it back in away from residential properties, and therefore seeking to avoid a bypass, I suppose, of the planning process in those instances? Also, other restrictions, for example, restrictions on the height of buildings or floor area may well be another factor to identifying whether any developments fall within the local development order, so then aren't required to go through the application process, or will go through that application process. By way of example, temporary buildings is potentially one aspect. There'll be the need for new wards to be provided, temporary wards on the hospital. And as new buildings are constructed and those wards slot in, the temporary wards will need to be relocated to an alternative location, so that there's this constant moving around. Well, the potential is that on each occasion a new planning application is required, and there's a delay to the programme and process that takes place. So we're exploring where we can help that planning process, but also the development process to go ahead in a suitable way. So agreement is sought to endorse that these discussions beyond the period of Kettering Borough Council are maintained. So the recommendation there, if I just add a little bit more, I think one emphasis that we were conscious of is that it's something that we're having discussions over and we haven't brought to members yet. And we wanted to put it above the table for Kettering Borough Council's members, so that there's something in place to start to identify that it is on the work programme. Kettering Borough Council as a council was in support of the ongoing work along this theme, and then it's something that it would promote to the new authority to continue to undertake. So the recommendation, Chair, excuse me, is that members note the discussions taking place in relation to the redevelopment of Kettering General Hospital, and agree that officers continue with discussions to agree a local development order for Kettering General Hospital site. I'm not getting emotional, just got tickly throat, sorry about that. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from our councillors? Councillor Jelly.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I'm fully supportive of this. Obviously, the hospital is in my ward, in St Peter's ward. You know, it's going to be the health and wellbeing hub of the new council going forward into Northamptonshire. I think it's a good idea to have this LDO in place. The new council is going to be developing itself over the next 4 or 5 years. And this in itself allows us to minimise any delays or issues about, you know, getting things done in time. It's vitally important. You know, there's so many people that rely on the hospital, and I'm fully supportive of it. So yeah, very happy to go through, very happy to recommend it, Chair.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to make any comment?
Councillor O'Hara, Chair.
Was that a Councillor O'Hara putting a hand up? Yes. Councillor O'Hara, please.
I had to put my hand up properly as well as raise my hand, honestly. I think this is a fab idea. It's not really comparable to seats on the streets. So there's a little bit more change than we see at the cafes.
Absolutely.
I think it's I just wondered how it would work. Would the manager of all these changes, so would they feed into us, and we kind of have a spreadsheet of the works that is going to be undertaken and the timeline for that work to be undertaken, so that they don't have to keep applying for like construction traffic times and things like that, because it's going to be just on a continuously rolling program over the next, you know, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, however long it takes. So it then means that they haven't got to keep coming back if they want to change anything. So will they have an overall plan of this is what we want to do in the next 10 years, and this is hopefully the timeline it's going to take to do that? And you know, they'll have like a Gantt plan. So if this happens, we'll then have to do that. This happens, we'll then have to change and do that. So is that what they're going to do? They're going to have an initial plan. This is how it's going to work. We agree it. So it's like having an outline planning application essentially, but then they can change it as things evolve and things are made better. And they realise that that wouldn't work on that site. So therefore they can change it and they don't have to keep coming back to planning to do that. Is that how it would work essentially?
Yes, Chair, absolutely. So the hospital have an expert group of people that are working on each tiny little phase of the development. So there'll be, you know, a program longer than your arm that's taking you through. What they are then proposing to do is provide that to us, so that then we can start to identify which of those elements we think have the potential to come forward without that are helpful to their program and the project, but without bringing with it a risk to development and residents in the area. And that will be part of the detailed piece of work that we'll undertake to consider through the preparation of the local development order. I think also you highlight as to whether, or I was thinking through as to whether there are any examples, and there are very few. And yes, the Seats on Streets proposal is quite different, but it's the same round of principles, provided that any proposals fall within an agreed framework. There will then not be the need for them to submit a planning application. So we need to be careful to ensure that what we're identifying and agreeing to is appropriate. That will be a fundamental element to that piece of work, because of the risk that exists with it. But also we want to be as positive and helpful to the programme of work as it is. And I just wanted to say, in terms of examples, there aren't all that many. Local development order is something that the government have put out there and is available for authorities to prepare, but not many authorities do so. We have identified one authority, and we've spoken to them about their local development order, and one of their local development orders was for a hospital, but unfortunately it didn't find its way through to approval. So we'll do some further work. We're proposing to do some further work and really get into the details to better understand that we can be confident in the local development order that we bring back to future members.
Simon, can I just ask, sorry, Chair, can I just ask then, can I just clarify, with the local development order, it negates the need to get a planning application in, because it's almost like getting all the everything in place at once, and we agree it, instead of having to keep coming back and asking for planning to be approved for different sections of the development of the hospital. And that's really what it is. So it is, like I said, it's a Gantt plan, so that it can be changed in negotiation with you without having to go through the whole planning process, which could take weeks or months, depending on where we are with the work. So it's a better way. And actually, I think it's quite a coup for us to be able to do that, because like you say, there's barely any in the country. So to be able to do it and manage it in symbiosis with a whole plethora of things going on within that, I think it's absolutely a fab idea. So thank you guys for doing that.
No, that's fine. So yes, it is. It'll have a set of parameters, and if a proposal goes outside of that set of parameters, then they need to apply to the council for that permission. Within the set of parameters, then no, it would be it would fall within the local development order, and permission wouldn't be required. And we can talk about the detail further down the line. We're still early days in exploring, but I think the temporary wards is a good example, because it would be a temporary building or buildings, and they may well have to relocate and move them throughout the whole of the site. And you don't want to be applying for plan permission 8-10 times over to move a building in that way.
Thank you for that clarification, Simon. I think we're all delighted that this development is going to go ahead. It is critical to the health and well-being of all of the residents in this area. So I'm going to go straight now to the recommendation.
Councillor Tebbett, sorry, I can see that Councillor Adams has her hand up. Sorry to interrupt.
I didn't see you. It wasn't drawn to my attention, Linda. I do apologise.
Okay, thank you, Chair. It's just a couple of things really. At this point, I'll just need to put on to declaring interest in that I'll work for the County Council for adult social care. But just a couple of things with the LDO. Does it have a reviewing process with it? In that as policies change, planning policies, etc., change, with it sort of extending over 10 years. And the second one is, how is it monitored whether they do something on such a large build, if you like, that they don't go outside of the parameters of the LDO?
Thank you. So in terms of a review, if we wish for there to be a review, then we can include that within the local development order. So the town centre example, we had that covering the town centre for 3 years in the first instance, and then we needed to renew it. Well, this time around, we've extended it until it's revoked. So that's one element to it. And then in terms of how it's monitored, it's a good question, and it's something that I'll take back and explore. But I think it's down to the authority as enforcement. If we become aware that there's elements that arguably aren't meeting the local development order, then we'll need to investigate and see whether any enforcement adjustments necessary. That would likely be the need for the submission of a planning application. But I think the way that we've been building working relationship with the hospital will seek to ensure that we're all clear on exactly what's possible and what's not. So therefore you would expect that there wouldn't be the need for that to occur, because there shouldn't be the concerns over the working proposals that occur at site.
Thank you. The recommendation is that members note the discussions taking place in relation to the development of Kettering General Hospital and agree that officers continue with discussions to agree a local development order for the Kettering General Hospital site. Can I have a proposer and a seconder?
I propose that, Chair.
No, you're too late. It was proposed by Jan and seconded by Linda. Thank you very much indeed. That concludes the final Planning Policy Committee meeting of Kettering Borough Council. Thank you all very much for your contribution over the months, weeks and years of your membership of this and to the officers for all of their hard work over this period. I'm delighted that our last final operation, if you like, is to put this part 2 out for its final consultation. It's been consulted on about 3 or 4 times before, and the pain that Julie has gone through with the planning inspector, she has our deepest sympathies. But thank you all very much indeed on this final evening.